Díomh Accord Galéir, my name is James Nagle, welcome to The Irish Nation Lives. In July of 1919, Cathal Brugha, the Minister for Defence, and Richard Mulcahy, the Chief of Staff of the Irish Volunteers, authorised Michael Collins to carry out the first attack of what would become the Intelligence War. In theory, Mulcahy and Collins were subordinate to Brugha, but this was complicated by the fact that there was no formal relationship between the Irish Volunteers and Dáil Éireann. Although heavily dominated by the Irish Republican Brotherhood in its early years, the Irish Volunteers was an independent organisation and had been formed long before Dáil Éireann. Many volunteer officers had been elected to Parliament in the 1918 general election, and while both organisations had similar aims, ridding Ireland of British rule, they had very different opinions on how this could be achieved. By and large, Dáil Éireann supported Éamon de Valera's plan of gaining recognition of the Irish Republic from the United States and pushing for representation at the League of Nations. Some within the Volunteers, however, were suspicious of this political direction. They believed that a resort to arms would be necessary to free Ireland, and the sooner this began the better. In January, Seumas Robinson and a group of volunteers in Tipperary set out to start a conflict before the Dáil could meet for the first time. Collins had been hopeful of starting an armed campaign in February, but was reined in by de Valera following his escape from prison. Throughout the country, independent attacks and raids for arms by the Volunteers were increasing, and on the 4th of August, 2 RIC officers were killed in County Clare. Since the 1916 Rising, the Irish Republican Brotherhood had rebuilt itself and had been active in exerting its influence over the Irish Volunteers. Throughout the country, volunteer officers were being recruited and sworn into the Brotherhood, and by mid-1919, Michael Collins, the Volunteer Director of Intelligence, had become President of the Supreme Council, making him President of the Irish Republic under the IRB Constitution. At a meeting of Dáil Éireann on the 20th of August, Cathal Brugha proposed that all deputies and members of the Irish Volunteers swear allegiance to the Irish Republic and to the Dáil. He modified the wording used by senators and congressmen in the United States and proposed that they swear to support and defend the Irish Republic and government of the Irish Republic, which is Dáil Éireann. Brugha argued that every government in the world administered an oath of allegiance, and he pointed out that under the current volunteer constitution, they were prevented from being subject to any other body but their own executive. The object, he said, was to unify the whole movement in Ireland. He may also have been aiming at limiting IRB influence. Though a former member, he and many others had left the organisation following the 1916 Rising, and he believed that it no longer had a place in the changed Irish political landscape. While the oath was to be taken by members, officers and clerks of the Dáil, the main aim was to bring the Irish Volunteers under government authority. There were a few objections, mainly from TDs who felt that they shouldn't be required to take it, but the motion, seconded by Terence MacSwiney, was passed by 30 votes to 5. In response to this, the Irish Republican Brotherhood met in September to update their constitution. Clauses were added stating that members could loyally accept and obey Dáil Éireann as IRB policy had succeeded in bringing it into existence, and the President of the Supreme Council was no longer President of the Irish Republic. Even if it no longer viewed itself as the legitimate government of the Republic, the IRB still believed that it had a major role to play in steering the coming conflict, and possibly guiding a future Irish state. Members would take the oath to Dáil Éireann and continue on with the organisation's work in the background. While the oath would come up again later in the bitter feud between Cathal Brugha and Michael Collins, its main impact was that it precipitated a name change. A noted participant and historian of the Irish Revolution, Ernie O'Malley, would later state that with the swearing of this oath, the Irish Volunteers officially became the Irish Republican Army. Since their inception, the Volunteers had had a problem with authority and with external bodies trying to influence them. Now transformed into the IRA, the rank and file believed that it was they, by their actions and sacrifice, who would bring about Irish freedom. Their independence and the lack of any meaningful control by Dáil Éireann or even their own general headquarters would allow them to function with devastating effect when cut off from both of these bodies in the depths of the War of Independence. This would become a problem, however, in December of 1921, when various units throughout the country would make their stance on the Anglo-Irish Treaty known before a vote had even taken place in Dublin, steering the country towards civil war. For now, there is unity in the Republican movement, but next month will see Dáil Éireann suppressed by the British authorities. Lessons learned from the botched attack in July and a near escape on the 12th of September spurn Michael Collins to formally establish an active service unit, known as the Squad, to target members of the Dublin Metropolitan Police. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with new episodes and check out the social media links in the description. A chomhairde, thank you for joining me on The Irish Nation Lives. Slán go fóill.